It has been just over a month that we planted out our very first fall garden in this space in the backyard, and we are already getting a harvest. So let me take you in and show you exactly what's growing behind us and what we're already putting on our dinner plate. Hey guys, welcome back to the Neem Oil Farm, a channel about gardening and homesteading in the suburbs. I am so excited for the November garden tour because it has just been about over a month and we're already getting a harvest from this space. Now, in the October garden tour, I told you that would happen with some of our baby greens. We're actually harvesting full-size greens now on some of our mustards and our arugula and stuff, and we actually even have some beans coming through ready for the table. So let me take you in, show you what varieties are growing, what varieties are still lacking, and just overall what's going on in the November garden. Alright, so over here you can see we actually have some full-size mustard greens that are doing really well. We planted about, I want to say it's like 3 square feet of these, and so far we have been harvesting these, and there are actually, if you move over like some of the fully grown leaves, there's still some baby ones trying to come through. So I foresee that we're going to be probably getting a very good harvest of our mustard greens. You can see they have that deep purple color already. So these actually have somewhat of like a mild spicy flavor, but the longer you let them grow, the more bitter and the spicier then they become. So you can see leaves like this size are definitely going to be much more spicy than something like this that's much smaller. I actually prefer them a little bit more tangy, so I let them grow a little bit longer, but Alan doesn't quite like it, so for those I kind of harvest smaller, but we are actually already getting a good harvest from these. You can also see here that back here, if you can see in this little space, we have some little volunteer plants that the wind has just migrated and we've just let them go. So we will be getting some extra mustard greens over there. And back over here we have our cherry tomatoes. They're actually getting quite tall here. They're almost big enough, most of them are almost big enough to reach the fence. This one over here definitely is big enough. I just have to tie it, and we do have some that are doing really well and are even taller than this. So these are our cherry tomatoes. I forget the name of them, but I will leave them on the screen. And we have, was it 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 of them in this space. They're getting quite big. I did fertilize them, and they are getting some more leaf miner damage after I put the initial neem oil application on them, but I came back and did a second round of that, and they seem to be getting much better. I haven't seen too much on like the new growth yet, so we'll see how that goes. I have done 2 applications now of the neem oil spray, just mixing it in water and pouring it directly into the dirt. And then down here you can see we also have some parsley growing. So this is my flat leaf parsley, which I kind of just scattered in between. Some of it the wind did pick up and kind of move it around, and I'm not really making too much of a big fuss about it. But you can see, you know, I just kind of planted some of it underneath just as like a cover crop to cover the soil so that it's not completely bare when these tomato plants end up all the way up here vining. So next up, right next to our mustard, there you go, we have our lemon basil. So lemon basil actually has an amazing smell. I didn't used to plant lemon basil, but then one of my neighbors had it growing because I planted it actually in his garden with seeds that I didn't want, and since then I have just always grown it because I just absolutely love how it smells, how it tastes, and the teas that come out of it. So then when it gets this tall, just like every other basil, I will come in here and I will snip off right there at the nub, so that the next 2 leaf nodule things can grow out, and it becomes bushier instead of taller. So then this, I can just take it and make some tea with it, or put it in eggs, or whatever I want to do with it. And right behind my lemon basil, I have my Marvel of Venice pole beans, which are doing an amazing job trellising up all by themselves. They have these really pretty purple flowers. I'm trying to focus on them here. There we go. They're absolutely gorgeous. I love them so much, and we have tons of beans already. We actually have beans like down here that are ready to be harvested, and you can hear Milo crying in the background because he wants some attention. But we have tons of beans that are just about ready to go. They are kind of like overlapping on themselves here. It's kind of like, if I zoom out here a little bit, you have like a bunch of them that are just growing on themselves, but all of them are actually connected to the trellis. You can see like the little vines here are just attached, and they're growing up all by themselves. And then somehow I'm gonna have to figure out how to get these ones from behind the trellis, but we'll figure that out when the time comes. I actually have probably a good couple handfuls of marble Venice pumpkins ready to be harvested. So when these turn yellow, the pods on the inside will turn bright purple, or actually like a deep purple color, and then they will be ready to cook. These ones, as you can see, are getting a little bit more rundown with leaf miners, and I did come through and do another application of neem oil, so hopefully that will help it. I am going to come in and just kind of like take out some of these leaves, because the little leaf miner things live inside them and then just kind of reproduce and spread to the rest of the plant. So anything that has, you know, that kind of leaf miner damage, I'm going to come through and just cut them off, just snip them off and put them either in compost or, you know, throw them out or something like that. So alright, and then down here is my chamomile. Now, I've never actually grown chamomile. It is maybe, the tallest ones are probably about 4 inches tall now, 3 inches tall or so. I actually have never seen chamomile grow. I'm hoping we get some flowers here soon. I know it'll probably take a little bit longer than I'm expecting it to, or wishing it will, but we have about 2 square feet of chamomile, and hopefully that will produce some really nice tea. Right next to that, we have some of the flat leaf parsley, which I just kind of scattered through and planted out until like the next little section there. And then right behind the flat leaf parsley is our butternut squash. Now, let's see here. So this butternut squash, I know that it's planted too closely together, and I do also know that I have to start trellising it up, because if I don't trellis it up, it is not only going to like make a mess out of all of this and just grow onto each other, but it's going to be overrun with disease because there's no space for all of this and there's no aeration. But we do have tons of new growth on this, so I'm really hoping that maybe we actually get a butternut harvest this season, and then once I start trellising it up, oh, and look, there is a flower also. Hopefully we get tons of flowers, and I might end up actually pinching some of these out, because I think we have maybe like 7 or 8 of these, and I don't think that there's enough space for them. Alright, so the next section over here, we have some more of the parsley. As you can see, I've just kind of like scattered it anywhere where I didn't have anything else to plant, just so that it acts as more of a ground cover. We have 2 of these, oh, you can't see it now. You have 2 of these butternut squash plants, which I think I'll probably end up having to remove one. Some arugula that just kind of like migrated itself over here. And then we have our little arugula patch. So we have been harvesting these. I especially like arugula as baby greens, because the taste on arugula as it gets probably about this tall, it does start getting a little bit more bitter. So you can see that it does have a little bit of leaf miner damage, and then harvesting them a little bit earlier does kind of prevent that. So I am going to be harvesting a lot of these very soon, just so that we can actually use our arugula and get some nice salads out of them, and then I put them in eggs as well. But I have approximately 4 square feet of arugula overall. Alright, and then on the other side of our arugula, we have actually 2 Roma tomato plants. This one is not doing so well. This one's doing a little bit better. You can definitely see some of the leaf miner damage. I think a lot of this leaf miner damage was from when we were on vacation, and I wasn't here for like a week, but the plants still did pretty well, so I can't complain. And then the new leaves don't have it. So this is arugula that just kind of like blew with the wind over here. And then in this space, which I forgot to plant something out, I just came back and kind of sowed some Genovese basil seeds. So you can see those taking off. And then I had just some scallions that I transplanted into this space as well. So I don't know if those are going to do super well there, but at least it'll be something to fill the space until I decide what else to do with it. Moving on to the next bed, you can also see some of these Genovese basils coming out. Now, these ones were the original ones I planted out. You see these are like a little bit bigger over here. The little ones that you're just seeing sprout out are actually ones that I came through the second and third time and planted out, because I think they were getting eaten. There were a lot of like seedlings without little heads on them, which is usually indicative of like slugs or caterpillars or something like that. And then behind it, you can see my Roma tomatoes didn't do too well. There's another Roma tomato plant. So overall, I planted out what was supposed to be 6 Roma tomato plants in this space so that it could go like up against the trellis here. And we only have, I want to say like 2 viable plants, because that one has the one behind it which isn't really growing. So that one I think is okay. And then this one is okay. And the other ones are pretty much dead. Alright, so on that same note, normally my tomato plants do a lot better, and I don't generally have tons of issues with seedlings like getting their little tops bitten off by slugs or caterpillars or anything like that. The difference that was this season was basically that we were getting this garden bed built out. So there was nothing here basically up until like a week before we built out the garden, right? We planted. So in that time period, I was not, wrong or right, I was not actually starting any seeds. Now what I should have done was start my seeds in my little mini greenhouse, or just, you know, out on the patio or something, and just allow them to grow and develop, and so that when I did have a garden to plant out, I could take my seedlings and pop them into the soil, and it would not only give them a head start, but it would prevent anything from being like completely destroyed because they would already have been established. There was just so much going on between moving from our old house into this space, building out the garden, you know, trying to get the food forest built out, that we ended up not, or I ended up not actually doing that. But usually what I do is I do start my seedlings ahead of time, which prevents anything from like being completely wiped out. And then if I have things that, you know, like my Roma tomatoes didn't make most of them, then I have extra seedlings that I can just pop in their place. So if you are starting a garden for the first time, I would definitely recommend starting seeds and not planting directly into the soil for the majority of your plants. So moving on, right next to my one little Roma tomato plant over here, we have some of our Swiss chard, which is the bottom half of the remainder of this bed, and then kale, which is on this side. Now this kale is different than the other kale I used to plant out. I used to plant out red Russian kale. I think this is like blue dazzling kale or something like that. It looks really nice, and the leaves actually have a really good taste. Now this one is actually getting a lot more like torn up by leaf miners, and I don't know if it's just like this new space that has a lot of leaf miners, or maybe we're gone for a little bit, but actually like my last kale was not getting this torn up by leaf miners, so we'll see how this goes. I'll probably give it 1 or 2 more chances, and then I might, you know, rip it out, because if you have tons of these leaves just, you know, overrun by leaf miners, then you can't really enjoy the kale. We'll see how that goes. And then my Swiss chard over here, which desperately needs to be thinned out and is actually not doing super well. You don't want to have like things like this with little spots on them. That's usually a sign of like some sort of deficiency. I will say I have neglected this Swiss chard a little bit more than I should have, and I actually didn't thin them out. Usually I come in and thin out a lot of this, so I might try to do that. But Swiss chard is also something that I do tend to start from seed in like containers and then transfer it out, and I just find that it gives them a little bit more of a fighting chance, especially in a new environment. So I'm not thinking that we're going to get too much of a harvest out of our Swiss chard, just because by now I would have been already harvesting it, and it's probably my fault at this point. But this one might be just something that I rip out to plant my carrots, my radishes, and that sort of thing. Next to this kale over here, which seems to be growing a lot faster, we have this kale, and I'm not exactly sure why it is. Like right here is a dividing factor. So this kale growing pretty normal, I think, for a month, and this kale seems to be stunted for the most part, and I'm not, like, I have no clue what that is, because there's soil in all of it. Like, it's pretty much shaded out and gets the same amount of sun. I really have no idea, so I'm gonna have to look further into that, as like, why is that space not growing and the one right beside it is. And then moving along that same line back here, you can tell how windy it has become. We have our bumblebee tomatoes. So my one that was right here, completely gone. This one is doing pretty well, besides the obvious leaf miner damage. With tomatoes, I'm not like super concerned with leaf miner damage, because it doesn't really affect the fruit. It does affect the leaves, which will in turn die and not be able to photosynthesize, and then it affects the fruit. But you know, you can kind of just like clip it off, and it won't really harm the rest of the plant too much, and then just toss those. And then I have two more in here. So my tomatoes this season, I think, have not been doing great for, you know, what I normally get. Normally I get like tons and tons and tons of hundreds of pounds of tomatoes, and I don't think that we're gonna get that this season. This is definitely the one that's doing the best. I do need to come over here and kind of like make sure it ties onto the trellis, but this one has, I think, benefited from a lot of fertilizer. I had more of them, and something looks like came in here since the last couple days and took them. So now I only have 3 of these bumblebee tomatoes, and like I said, that is the value of starting seeds and being able to just transplant them, you know, dig a little hole where the last one was and pop them in. And plus, when you have established plants, they tend to do a lot better than starting from seed, at least things like tomatoes. Right behind it though, we do have beans, and these are bush beans. These are jade bush beans, and I think it's like blue lake bush beans. I kind of mixed them all together and they seem to be doing pretty well. There are tons of little flowers on them right here. And we do have tiny little green beans growing out of those flowers. You can see we have, like right behind it, little bush beans. So besides this garden space here, we do have our rosemary planters, which I took from the previous garden, and I actually took those and just trimmed them up about 2 weeks ago. I do see that they did start growing a little bit of new growth, but the reason I did that is because every like fall, winter, when I notice that the temperature is starting to drop, like it has been here for the past week or so, I will go in and I will cut my rosemary bushes. They are getting quite large, and so I just do that so that, you know, they don't die during winter, because the leaves will start, you know, coming off, and they are actually a perennial here, so I grow them all year round. But if there's tons of rosemary on them already, I don't want to lose out on that, so I cut off, I gave them a nice little haircut, and I was able to put those in herb bombs and dry a whole bunch of rosemary and all of that, so then those will overwinter when the temperature gets colder, and then in spring they will have another growth spurt. So that is something that I did this month as well, to prepare for winter. And then the last thing that I am considering, and I hesitate to say this because I'm not sure if I'm going to do it or not, but we have a 1.7, 1.8 acre property, and we don't have anything growing on there besides like the natural vegetation that grows like Florida native plants. So what I'm considering doing is taking some of my radishes, some of my root crops, and just kind of creating like this little miniature space over there. Now, we don't have water on that property. It has been raining quite a bit, but we actually have a rain barrel and a way to get water, so, you know, we can water the plants if need be. I'm considering doing that just because it's kind of like going unused as far as planting things right now, so I want to be able to plant out all of my stuff, and I hate ripping things up in the middle of the season, like the garden behind me. I want to give it a chance to grow, and I did account for that before, you know, I planted out my garden. But if I can use the space and plant everything and grow everything at the same time, then I might just consider planting out some of my root crops over there, but we shall see. Alright, and then over here is my potting bench. I don't think I showed you guys this in my last video, but this found its little home here on this miniature patio that my grandmother has in the back of her house. So my potting bench has been relocated here. Now, this is a project I have actually been working on for the past several months, which are my snake plants. So this snake plant is my original snake plant. Oops, let me get this out of the way. This is my original snake plant, and it actually came up with me when I moved from South Florida. It was in my old house, just kind of like growing like in the middle of the concrete or something. They are pretty hardy, they grow just about anywhere, and I dug it up and I brought it up with me when I moved in with Alan. So I planted it, and ever since I planted it about 2 years ago in the same exact pot, it has gotten definitely much bigger, but at the same time I've noticed that it has put out a whole bunch of pups, like this one right here, this pup right there, this little prickly thing that looks kind of like, there we go, I think that's better. You can see it's putting out little babies, and every so often snake plants will put out these new little babies, and then I can take them and dig them up. I'm not going to do it there because I need more hands than I have right now, but I am gonna take this up, outroot it, and make sure, you know, it's still attached with the roots on it, not killing this plant of course, but I'm gonna take this and transplant it into a new container. So every month or so, when I notice it has another little pup, I let it grow till it gets about let's say that big or so, and then I will put it in a new little container. I think the last one I did was this one right here, and you can see it already has some of those new little leaves coming right through. So this is actually a project I'm working on, not just for the heck of it, but because, you know, we have some time for our dream house to be built. So I am taking these and just propagating them, I guess is the best way to say it. So now I have my original snake plant. I have 2 there. I have another one right here. I have one here, one down here somewhere. There we go. There's an aloe vera plant actually that I've done the same thing with, and then I have one in the front of the house, which I just never moved. Now all of these, once they are big enough, will then start putting out their own little snake plants. And I don't know about you, but I mean, I like fruit plants. Snake plants are quite expensive. They do pretty well inside, outside. You know, I really don't water them at all. I think every once in a while, like the soil's pretty dry. I don't really spend a lot of time watering them. When I, you know, notice that it's getting pretty dry in here, then I come and just give them a sprinkle of water, and they pretty much grow all on their own. I do have some lemon basil over here that I have propagated out, and then, or not propagated, but just had extra seeds and dumped it in here. That was Genevieve's basil that is still not germinating. And then I have some pine cones from the property that I just thought were pretty, so we brought them to decorate our space in like this new little fall potting bench area. Over here is one of my other aloe vera plants, which is spawned off the one in front of the house. And these here are rosemary that I have had in these containers for quite some time actually. I just gave them a little bit more water recently, so you can see a little bit of a growth spurt. There you go. With some new growth on them, but overall, like, these ones will pick up probably in spring, and I am propagating these out for my soon-to-be mother-in-law who has a problem with keeping rosemary alive. So those will be going to her, and then the snake plant project that I'm working on will be planted out all around our dream home as a very frugal landscaping decor project. Alright guys, well that pretty much wraps up our mini urban farm November garden tour. If you want to see more videos like this, let me know in the comments below. I know that this garden is definitely much smaller than the previous garden, but hopefully in the coming months I will be sharing with you how we are starting our new garden, our new food forest, our everything, our dream house over on the new property. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.